Just as the armored truck was about to pass the bridge, the crew skillfully pulled down their masks and stepped on the gas. Suddenly, a steel cable shot up from the bridge. The truck didn't have time to dodge. It crashed into the cable and tumbled to the ground. The robbers quickly rammed the security gate open using a tow hook and rushed into the truck, holding automatic weapons. Inside, the guards were caught off guard. Inside, the security guards were caught off guard and quickly overpowered. But the team was confused. Why rob this particular truck headed to the bank when it didn't even have cash inside? Then one of the robbers sprinted under the bridge and pulled away a cover. Hidden underneath was an identical armored truck. They quickly removed the GPS from the real truck and had exactly 60 seconds to install it onto theirs. If not, the control center would immediately sound the alarm. One of the women in the group quickly changed into a uniform, got into a sports car, and sped off. The fake armored truck followed behind at a safe distance. When they got close to the bank, the sports car turned into an underground garage, while the armored truck continued toward the vault as planned. At the entrance, they showed an access pass through a viewing window. One of them held it up quickly and moved aside. Moments later, he returned with a serious look. Luckily, everything went smoothly, and they were let inside the vault without trouble. Once inside, they put their masks back on and swiftly restrained the vault staff. They placed a prepared explosive on the vault door and carefully moved to the other side of the truck. The alarm began to sound immediately. One robber rushed inside and began grabbing all the cash. The other two kept watch and secured the staff. Soon, 3 huge bags of money were tossed out. Each of them carried a bag, then set the armored truck on fire as planned. They moved to another wall and planted 2 more explosives. Then one of the robbers performed a sharp U-turn and drove back to pick up the others. They quickly loaded the bags into the trunk and disappeared from the scene, leaving behind stunned bystanders. Just as someone pulled out their phone to call the police, a gun was suddenly pointed at his head. Out of nowhere, 3 masked individuals appeared. In the chaos of the parking lot, they opened fire. In just 20 seconds, everyone on site was down. At this moment, the 4 robbers were completely unaware of how serious things had become. They continued with their exit plan. First, they changed into brand new suits. Then, they ignited homemade incendiary devices. Each drove off in a different car, thinking their luxurious new lives had just begun. But the real crisis was only starting. As night fell, Frank was preparing to drive away. Suddenly, 2 police cars appeared behind them. One of the gang members leaned out the window and opened fire, but the officers didn't flinch. They accelerated toward them. Realizing things were going south, the driver threw a can full of nails onto the road, successfully stopping the patrol cars. But Frank wasn't relieved. He had no idea how they'd been discovered. Just as panic set in, bright headlights flashed in their faces, and another car slammed into them from behind. One of the robbers came to, sensed something was wrong, grabbed a weapon, and exchanged fire with the police. The noise woke Frank. Dazed and injured, he crawled out of the car. Using his partner's cover, he ran for his life. But the partner wasn't so lucky. He was hit and went down. Frank, in desperation, leapt off the bridge and landed in a dumpster. That's how he narrowly survived. The next day, the chief prosecutor held a press conference and confirmed that 8 people had died in the parking lot. Shockingly, one of them was a judge who had been secretly investigating a criminal group from 30 years ago. Just a week ago, she had arrested a member of that group. Now, at such a critical moment, she was killed in the parking lot. The authorities accused Frank and his crew of being part of that old organization. They claimed the bank robbery was just a cover. The real goal was to eliminate the judge and stop the investigation. Frank watched the news in disbelief. They had indeed robbed the bank, but they never hurt anyone. It was clear someone had framed them. To avoid being manipulated, Frank decided to lay low and uncover the truth once the situation cooled down. But the moment he stepped out of the car, a swarm of officers surrounded him and took him into custody. At the police station, facing endless accusations, Frank broke down and shouted, "It was me. I did it." I said that. The police chief held up a report. This isn't just about what you said. The first piece of evidence is right here. Your fingerprints are on the weapon. What do you have to say? Unable to defend himself, Frank was thrown into jail. But he didn't give up. He had received inside info that someone on the outside, Vic, was planning to break him out. That night, his cellmates lit a strip of cloth to distract the guards. Meanwhile, Frank used a wire to hook a bundle that dropped from the ceiling. Inside was a phone. He immediately called Vic to confirm the next steps. The following morning, a guard entered Frank's cell. He picked up a package, pressed his ear to the door, and waited until everything was quiet. Then he opened it carefully. It was a bomb. He lifted a tile and hid it underneath. Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway. He grabbed a towel and acted like he was doing push-ups. When a guard entered to call him for breakfast, they were none the wiser. That afternoon, Vic came disguised as a Middle Eastern woman for a visit. The moment he got in, he pulled out a launcher and aimed it at the guards. He stuck an explosive on the main door, dragged a guard behind the wall, and, boom, the door blew open. Sirens wailed. They shot off the lock and stormed inside, holding a guard hostage. Hearing the chaos, Frank knew the plan had begun. He used his mattress as a shield, blasted open the cell door, and took a guard hostage. They met up with the rest of the team. But then, Vic forced the guard to open the cells holding the former gang members. Seeing Frank's confusion, Vic explained, "If we use them as hostages, the cops won't dare shoot." They crept toward the exit and saw that the entire prison was surrounded. To block the sniper's view, they all held up black umbrellas. Frank even pulled the pin on a grenade, threatening that if he let go, no one would survive. The police chief ducked behind cover. In the tense standoff, a female officer stepped forward and offered to trade herself for the hostage in Frank's hands. It turned out she had long suspected something was off. Her secret investigation had uncovered that one of the criminals had a tattoo identical to the chief's. She needed Frank alive to expose the truth. They made the criminal lie on the hood of the car and floored the gas. Strangely, the police didn't stop them. Just when it seemed like they were about to escape, disaster struck again. A helicopter hovered overhead, tracking them like a ghost. They rushed into a tunnel where a car was waiting. But as Vic approached the car, a bullet shot out from inside. It was an ambush. The woman robber tried to pull Vic's body to safety, but was attacked from behind. Frank, seeing it all, was overwhelmed with grief and rage. He hurled a grenade and fired back intensely, not realizing the police chief had crept up behind them. The chief raised his gun and fired at the female officer. Luckily, she was wearing a bulletproof vest and wasn't seriously hurt. In the chaos, Frank jumped into a car with her and another ally and fled the scene. During the ride, Vic, shaken by everything that had happened, finally told the truth. He confessed that he had been secretly working for the chief the entire time. It was Vic who had killed the female judge during the bank heist. It was Vic who had leaked Frank's location, leading to his injury and hospitalization. And it was Vic who had silently taken out each member of their crew during the prison break. But what Vic never saw coming was that he would become the chief's next target. Watching the last person he could trust die in front of him, Frank was overwhelmed with grief and rage. A fire lit within him. He swore he would bring the chief down, no matter the cost. But just as his anger reached its peak, the female officer suddenly grabbed the gun from his belt. In that moment, Frank realized how powerless he truly was. Revenge wouldn't come easily. So, he listened. And in the end, he agreed to her plan. They drove to the home of a high-ranking prosecutor, a man known for his integrity, someone who wouldn't tolerate corruption. If he heard the truth, he might be their only hope of exposing the chief. But the moment she stepped into the house, the chief and his men arrived. Frank slipped out of the car and circled around to the back entrance. What he saw shattered any last trace of hope. The prosecutor was part of it. He and the chief were working together. Former criminals, once hiding in the shadows, now sat in places of power, untouchable and protected by their titles. Knowing they stood no chance, Frank backed away from the house. When they tried to drag the female officer away, Frank slammed the car into gear and drove forward to cause a distraction. In the chaos, he struck and killed the chief. But the cost was unbearable. The officer lost her life. Now truly alone, Frank was no longer bound by fear or loyalty. He would finish what they started, in his own way. The next morning, he rode his motorcycle through the city and began tailing the prosecutor. As soon as the man entered his car, Frank followed without hesitation. Later, he sent the officers' collected evidence to hundreds of law enforcement officials across the country. He believed that somewhere out there, someone still believed in justice, someone who would carry the torch that she left behind. And in that moment, Frank knew he had fulfilled her final wish.